What makes a man kill not out of rage, not out of desperation, but out of an idea? What drives a human being to cross the ultimate line, not because of passion, not because of self-defense, but because of philosophy? This is not just a crime story. This is a psychological experiment, an exploration of the human soul by one of the greatest novelists who ever lived, Fyodor Dostoevsky. And at the center of this experiment stands one man, Rodion Raskolnikov, a poor ex-student trapped in the suffocating poverty of St. Petersburg, a man too proud to accept help, too intelligent to ignore the cruelty of life, and too restless to live quietly in misery. Raskolnikov is not your typical murderer. He is literature's most beloved killer, the man who forces us to question not only morality, but ourselves. Because behind every page of crime and punishment lies a disturbing question. If you believe that breaking the law could serve a greater good, would you dare to do it? Would you cross that line and live with the consequences? Dostoevsky once said, "Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart." And that is exactly what Raskolnikov embodies, a man whose suffering comes not from poverty alone, but from the unbearable weight of his own thoughts. So today, we step into his world, a world of narrow streets, dark taverns, crowded apartments, a city suffocating with poverty and moral decay. And in this city, we will watch a man wrestle with God, with conscience, with guilt, and with the possibility of redemption. This is not just the story of Raskolnikov. It is the story of every one of us who has ever wondered, am I allowed to break the rules? Do I have the right to decide who should live and who should die? And if I do, can I carry that burden without destroying myself? To understand Raskolnikov, we must first understand his world. Imagine the streets of 19th century St. Petersburg. Overcrowded, filthy, alive with noise. The air is heavy, the walls of buildings drip with dampness, and every alley whispers with desperation. Raskolnikov lives in a tiny, suffocating room so small that he can barely stand upright in it. It is less a home than a prison cell, a reflection of his inner state. He is trapped not just physically, but mentally. He is a former student, brilliant but impoverished, forced to abandon his studies because he cannot afford them. In a society that values wealth and status, he is invisible. His pride prevents him from asking for help, yet his mind burns with ambition. He wants to prove that he is not ordinary, that he is destined for something greater. And this is where his dangerous idea begins to form. The city around him mirrors his inner chaos. Dostoevsky paints St. Petersburg not as a backdrop, but as a character itself. Cold, oppressive, suffocating. The city seems to conspire with Raskolnikov's thoughts, pushing him deeper into darkness. Everywhere he looks, he sees injustice. A drunken father wasting away his family's money, a desperate mother selling her daughter to survive, a pawnbroker who profits from the misery of others. It is in this last figure, the pawnbroker Alyona Ivanovna, that Raskolnikov finds his target. She is old, cruel, and greedy. She preys on the poor, taking their last possessions in exchange for coins. To Raskolnikov, she is a parasite, a woman whose existence brings suffering to others. And here, his philosophy takes shape. What if, by killing one worthless life, he could save dozens of others? This is not murder, he tells himself. This is justice. This is a mathematical equation, one life in exchange for many. Nietzsche once said, "The great man is the one who can be the law to himself." And though Dostoevsky wrote before Nietzsche, Raskolnikov becomes the living embodiment of that idea. He begins to believe that some men, extraordinary men, have the right to step over the law, to commit crimes if their actions serve humanity. But here is the danger. Philosophy is clean. Life is messy. An idea may sound noble in the mind, but in the real world, blood is not so easily washed away. For now, however, Raskolnikov clings to his vision. He is poor, invisible, suffocating in his little room. But in his mind, he is already great, a man above morality, destined to change the world. And so the stage is set. A city drowning in misery, a man drowning in thoughts, and one idea that will soon demand action. Raskolnikov is not a man of action at first. He is a man of thought. His greatest weapon and his greatest curse is his mind. And in the silence of his cramped room, a dangerous theory begins to consume him. What separates an ordinary man from an extraordinary one? Is it strength, intelligence, courage, or is it simply the willingness to do what others cannot? Raskolnikov becomes obsessed with this question. He looks at history and sees men like Napoleon, men who killed thousands, yet were celebrated as heroes, men who ignored morality, ignored the law, and carved their own path through blood and power. Why, Raskolnikov asks, should they be allowed to kill while he is condemned for even imagining it? This thought grows inside him like a poison. Perhaps the world is divided into two kinds of people, the ordinary, who must obey the law, and the extraordinary, who have the right to break it. Ordinary men are bound by morality. Extraordinary men create morality. And Raskolnikov begins to wonder, into which category does he belong? He tells himself that he is not planning murder for selfish reasons. No, this is for the greater good. By killing one cruel pawnbroker, he could free countless people from suffering. Think of it. Students no longer forced to sell their books. Families no longer forced to pawn their last possessions. Young girls no longer sacrificed to poverty. One death could bring relief to many lives. He convinces himself this is not murder, it is mathematics. Not a sin, but a solution. Fyodor Dostoevsky was fascinated by this conflict between logic and morality. Because logic can justify anything. Logic can make cruelty sound like kindness, murder sound like justice. And this is the trap Raskolnikov falls into, the trap of rationalization. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest sin is to be unconscious." And that is Raskolnikov's flaw. He believes he is fully conscious, fully rational, yet he is blind to the chaos of his own soul. At night, he dreams of violence. He sees visions of the pawnbroker, of blood, of guilt. His body trembles, his mind splits, yet still he whispers to himself, "I am not ordinary. I am extraordinary. This is my destiny." This belief does not make him powerful. It makes him sick. But sickness and destiny are now indistinguishable in his mind, and so the plan takes form. The pawnbroker, the axe, the moment where philosophy will meet reality. Raskolnikov tells himself this is only a test. If he can cross the line, he will prove to himself that he is extraordinary. If he cannot, then he is nothing. This is no longer about justice. It is no longer about helping the poor. It is about proving his own worth to himself. And this is where Dostoevsky's genius lies. Because how many of us have done something reckless, not because it was right, not because it was wise, but because we wanted to prove something? How many of us have whispered, "I am not ordinary, I am different, I must show it"? Raskolnikov is not just a character in a novel. He is a mirror. He reflects our pride, our ambition, our dangerous hunger to be more than we are. And soon, he will act. Soon, the extraordinary man will put his theory to the test. But what happens when theory meets blood? What happens when an idea becomes a crime? We are about to find out. The day finally arrives. The theory has burned long enough in his mind. The idea can no longer remain a thought, it must become an act. Raskolnikov prepares himself, the acts, the timing, the pretext. Every detail is rehearsed in his mind over and over again. Yet when the moment comes, nothing feels rehearsed. He walks the narrow streets of St. Petersburg, his heart pounding, his body weak with fever. The city is heavy with heat, and every step feels like destiny pulling him forward. And there, in the suffocating little apartment of Alyona Ivanovna, philosophy meets reality. The murder itself is quick, brutal, chaotic. There is no grandeur, no noble sense of justice. There is only blood. And in that instant, Raskolnikov learns the truth. Murder is not an idea. It is an act that stains the soul. He tells himself it was necessary. He tells himself it was justified. But already, cracks appear in his mind because something went wrong. Alyona's innocent sister, Lizaveta, enters the room unexpectedly, and in a moment of panic, Raskolnikov kills her too. Now it is no longer philosophy. It is no longer justice. It is simply murder, raw, undeniable, irreversible. He escapes the scene, undetected, carrying with him only a few stolen trinkets. But he does not carry victory, he carries terror. At first he tells himself it is over, he has done it, he has crossed the line, he has proven that he is extraordinary. But almost immediately the weight begins to crush him. His body collapses in fever. His mind spins with paranoia. Every glance from a stranger feels like suspicion. Every knock at the door feels like judgment. Dostoevsky shows us here that guilt is not imposed from outside. It grows from within. The punishment begins not with the police, but with the conscience. Raskolnikov dreams of blood. He hears whispers in the streets. He hallucinates. He trembles. He hides the stolen objects, terrified of touching them, as if they are poisoned. The extraordinary man who was supposed to rise above morality is now drowning in it. Fyodor Dostoevsky once said, "Nothing is more seductive for a man than his freedom of conscience." But nothing is more tormenting either. And Raskolnikov now lives this torment. He wanted freedom. He wanted proof of greatness. Instead, he finds chains. Chains forged by his own soul. The city that once seemed to conspire with his thoughts now turns against him. The streets are unbearable. Faces blur. Voices accuse. He isolates himself, wandering aimlessly, muttering, collapsing into despair. And yet, he is not caught. The police have no proof. He is free. But what is freedom when your mind has become a prison? The crime has been committed, but the punishment has only just begun. Raskolnikov has crossed the line. He has killed. He has proven, at least in his own mind, that he is capable of stepping beyond ordinary morality. But instead of liberation, he finds torment. His world becomes a blur of sickness, paranoia, and despair. He hides from people, avoids the police, yet every silence, every glance, every dream reminds him of his guilt. The extraordinary man is crumbling. And then there is Sonya. Sonya is the daughter of a desperate family, forced into prostitution to keep her loved ones alive. She represents everything Raskolnikov despises about the cruelty of the world, innocence crushed by poverty. And yet, she also represents something he has forgotten: compassion, sacrifice, faith. Where Raskolnikov justifies cruelty with philosophy, Sonya endures cruelty with love. Where he rationalizes, she forgives. Where he hides, she accepts. It is Sonya who becomes his mirror, his guide, his conscience. Through her quiet strength, Raskolnikov begins to see that greatness is not measured by the power to kill, but by the power to endure, to love, to repent. At first he resists, he argues, he deflects, he clings to his pride. But Sonya stays. She listens. She suffers with him. And slowly, the walls begin to break. One of the most powerful moments in the novel is when Sonya reads to him the story of Lazarus from the Bible, the man who was dead and yet brought back to life. It is no accident. Raskolnikov is spiritually dead, entombed in his own guilt. But like Lazarus, he too longs for resurrection. Finally, the moment of truth arrives. Raskolnikov confesses, not just to the authorities, but to himself. He walks to the crossroads, kneels in the dust, and bows his head before the people. It is the first true act of humility in his life. And though the world sees only a criminal, for the first time Raskolnikov begins to feel human again. He is sentenced to Siberia, 2 years of hard labor in exile. But this, paradoxically, is his salvation, because in punishment, he finds freedom. In suffering, he finds peace. Fyodor Dostoevsky once said, "Taking a new step, uttering a new word, is what people fear most." And for Raskolnikov, the new word is not philosophy, not superiority, it is confession. The new step is not murder, it is redemption. Through Sonya's love, through suffering, through the slow rebirth of his soul, Raskolnikov becomes something greater than extraordinary. He becomes human. Raskolnikov's journey is not just the story of a murderer. It is the story of pride, guilt, love, and redemption. It is a reminder that the greatest battles are not fought with weapons, but within the human soul. He teaches us that no theory, no philosophy, no dream of greatness can protect us from the weight of conscience. And yet, he also shows us that no crime, no guilt, no despair is beyond redemption. We are all Raskolnikov in some way. We may not take an axe to another's life, but we kill time. We kill opportunities. We kill pieces of ourselves through fear, pride, and inaction. And just like him, we all stand at a crossroads between despair and renewal, between hiding and confessing, between destruction and rebirth. Raskolnikov's story ends not in greatness, not in glory, but in something far more powerful, the chance to begin again. And maybe that is the lesson we need most.